ESCOMATIC coil-fed automatic lathe, model D2 and D4. Setup operator training system. Lesson number 14, the model D4 drill turret. Located on the front of the model D4 ESCOMATIC is the indexable drill turret. Located on the indexable drill turret are two driven drill spindles. The position of the drill spindles is adjustable for centering them to the stock guide bushing. Also located on the indexable drill turret is the counter collet assembly. The counter collet assembly is adjustable for centering independently from the drill spindles. Located here is the central drive coupling. The purpose of the central drive coupling is to supply rotation to the drill spindles. The coupling is driven from the drill pulleys in the base of the machine. Drive to the coupling starts and stops with the main motor. The approach, feed, and return of the drills and counter collet into and out of the tooling area is controlled by the cams on the drill turret camshaft. 0 of the drill turret camshaft corresponds to 0 of the main camshaft. This is the drill turret cam follower lever. Located here is the common follower end of the lever. The common cam follower end holds 3 cam followers, 1 for each cam. Located at the opposite end of the drill turret cam follower lever is the contact roller. The purpose of the roller is to contact and move the drill spindles and counter collet into the tooling area. Located on the top of the common cam follower end are 3 micrometers. Below the 3 micrometers are the 3 micrometer lock screws. The purpose of the micrometers is to adjust the exact depth of the drill spindles and counter collet into the tooling area. The micrometer closest to the machine frame is marked tool position 3. This position is usually used to control the counter collet. This micrometer is marked tool position 4. This position is usually used to control the spot or first drill. This micrometer is marked tool position 5. This position is usually used for controlling the second drill. Located at the base of each micrometer are these gradation marks and index lines. Moving one gradation mark past the index line will be an adjustment of 1/2 thousandth. Located here just above the cam followers are the cam follower lock screws. The cam follower lock screws hold the cam followers in the cam follower holders. This is a typical drill and collet cam used on the model D4 ESCOMATIC. Each cam is usually marked as a drill cam or collet cam. This arrow indicates the clockwise rotation of the camshaft. Each cam can be divided into 4 portions. This is the rapid approach portion of the cam. The purpose of the rapid approach portion of the cam is to quickly move the tool into position in the tooling area. This is the approach portion of the cam. The approach is also the start of the feed portion of the cam. The approach is short and only lasts a few cycle degrees. The purpose of the approach is to allow the tools to slowly approach the workpiece before cutting begins. This is the feed portion of the cam. On the drill cam, this feed portion can be a rise, fall, or a dwell depending upon the job. The feed portion of the collet cam is usually a dwell. The purpose of the feed portion of the cam is to cause the drill to cut slowly to its correct depth or to hold the collet in position to clamp the finished part at cutoff. This is the rapid return portion of the cam. The purpose of the rapid return portion of the cam is to rapidly return the tool out of the tooling area of the machine. Indexing occurs just after full return of the cam follower lever and before the rapid approach portion of the next cam begins. Located on the back of the drill turret camshaft are the 3 index trip dogs. Each trip dog will cause the drill turret to index once. The purpose of the index trip dogs is to control the exact time the turret will index. The index trip dogs contact the index trip dog lever. The purpose of the index trip dog lever is to activate the indexing operation, which is controlled inside the command unit at the front of the machine. Located just behind the 3 index trip dogs are 2 collet trip dogs. One trip dog controls the opening of the collet. The other collet trip dog controls the closing of the collet. The purpose of the collet open and close trip dogs is to control the exact time the collet will be closed, then opened. The collet open-close trip dogs contact this collet open-close trip dog lever. There is 1 trip dog follower on the top and 1 trip dog follower on the bottom of the lever. The lever rocks back and forth as the trip dogs operate the lever. When the top of the lever is forced back, the collet is opened. When the bottom of the lever is forced back, the collet is closed. Each trip dog is marked with a part number and a degree mark. For different production rates, the trip dogs should be changed to the proper degree marking. For production rates of 1 to 16, a 10-degree trip dog should be used. For production rates of 18 to 32, a 15-degree trip dog is used. For production rates of 35 to 63, a 20-degree trip dog is used. Notice that there are also 2 different trip dogs shown. This trip dog is used for turret indexing and opening the counter collet. Only one of this type of trip dog is used for turret indexing. This trip dog is used for turret indexing and clamping the counter collet. There are 2 of this type trip dog used for turret indexing. Both are mounted to the outside of the index trip dog holder. The turret is indexed by the use of this Maltese cross crank and this Maltese cross. Each time an index trip dog signals an index, the crank will rotate and move the Maltese cross 1 position. Before the Maltese cross can be indexed, this index lock finger must be pulled out. This frees the turret for indexing. This index lock lever mates with the index lock finger. The index lock lever pulls the lock finger back to enable indexing. Pulling the lock finger out manually will allow the turret to be indexed by hand. Located here just behind the drill spindles and collet assembly are the collet open-close forks. The collet open-close forks are moved by this collet open-close finger. When the collet close trip dog signals collet close, the open close finger will move the fork up to close the collet. When the collet open trip dog signals collet open, the open close finger will move the fork down to open the collet. This is the face of the drill turret. Located here is the oil tube. The purpose of the oil tube is to provide coolant to the cutting tools and drills during operation. These are 2 drill collets. This is the counter collet used to hold the part during cutoff. To remove a drill collet from the drill spindle, hold the central drive coupling from rotating. Next, turn the drill collet tension adjustment nut on the back of the drill spindle counterclockwise. Continue to turn the adjustment nut until the assembly is loose. Remove the tension adjustment nut and collet holder rod combination. The collet can now be removed from the drill spindle. You may have to push the collet loose with the collet holder rod. These are the basic components of the drill collet assembly. This is the drill collet tension adjustment nut. The purpose of the adjustment nut is to adjust the holding pressure of the drill collet on the drill. This is the collet holder rod. The purpose of the collet holder rod is to thread onto the back of the drill collet and pull the drill collet back into the drill sleeve. This is the drill collet. The purpose of the drill collet is to hold the drill during the drilling operations. Each drill collet has a keyway that aligns with the key in the drill spindle. This is a drill centering plug. The drill centering plug threads onto the collet holder rod in place of the collet. The plug is used to align the drill spindle to the empty guide bushing bore. Before installing a drill into the machine, you must check your layout sheet for drill information. This dimension specifies the distance from the drill tip to the face of the drill collet sleeve. This dimension is set during drill installation. From the part print, find the correct size drill to be used for the job. Select a drill collet that allows the drill to slide smoothly in the drill collet. Insert the drill into the drill collet. Install the drill and collet into the drill sleeve. Make sure to align the keyway on the drill collet to the key of the drill sleeve. Insert and thread the collet holder rod to the collet. Next, measure the distance from the drill tip to the front of the drill sleeve. Adjust the drill for the proper dimension. Hold the central drive coupling from rotating and tighten the drill collet with the drill collet tension adjustment nut. Make sure that when the drill turret is lowered, that the drills clear the tool area cover by a minimum of 1 millimeter. To remove the counter collet from the machine, first loosen this counter collet holder tube lock screw. Now turn the counter collet tension adjustment nut counterclockwise. This will unthread the counter collet from the counter collet holder tube. You may have to push the counter collet holder tube forward to remove the counter collet. Remove the counter collet from the face of the drill turret. These are the basic components of the Model D4 ESCOMATIC counter collet assembly. This assembly uses a spring-loaded ejector pin to eject the finished part after cutoff and indexing. This is the counter collet. Each counter collet has a keyway to align with the key in the counter collet sleeve. The counter collets are marked with the size stock it can grip. The collet size should be chosen to be in the middle of the part tolerance range. This tolerance information can be found on your part print or layout sheet. This is the workpiece ejector pin. The ejector pin mounts inside of the counter collet. The ejector pin should be chosen so that the tip of the ejector pin is smaller than the size of the collet opening when the collet is closed. This will make sure that when the collet closes, the collet will grip the part and not the ejector pin. When installed in the collet, the ejector pin tip should be slightly recessed into the counter collet. This will allow the part to enter the collet before contacting the ejector pin. This is the ejector pin spring. The ejector pin spring is compressed as the part is fed into the counter collet. The collet then closes to hold the part. After index, the collet is opened and the ejector pin and spring force the part out of the collet. This is the counter collet holder tube. The counter collet holder tube threads onto the back of the counter collet. At the end of the counter collet holder tube is the counter collet tension adjustment nut. The purpose of the collet tension adjustment nut is to adjust the collet gripping tension on the part. As the tension nut is turned clockwise, the collet will be pulled farther back into the collet sleeve, increasing the collet gripping pressure. This is the collet holder tube plug. The purpose of the holder tube plug is to fill the hole at the end of the collet holder tube. The collet holder tube plug is inserted into the hole at the tension adjuster nut end of the collet holder tube. The plug is held in place by tightening the plug lock screw on the side of the collet tension adjustment nut. Installation of the plug is the first step in the assembly of the collet assembly. To assemble the counter collet assembly, insert the ejector pin spring into the collet holder tube. Next, insert the part piece ejector pin into the proper size collet for the job. Be sure the tip of the ejector pin is smaller than the size of the collet when the collet is closed and is slightly recessed into the collet. Install the collet and ejector pin into the collet sleeve on the face of the drill turret. Align the keyway of the collet to the key inside the collet sleeve. With the ejector pin spring inside the collet holder tube, slide the collet holder tube into the back of the collet holder assembly. Hold the collet in place at the face of the drill turret as you thread the collet holder tube onto the back of the counter collet. Temporarily snug the collet holder tube lock screw. During setup of the drill spindles and counter collet, both assemblies may have to be centered. This is the drill centering plug and the collet centering plug. Both plugs align with the empty guide bushing bore. You can identify the drill centering plug by internal threads. You can identify the collet centering plug by external threads. Centering controls for the drill spindles are the same as those used on the counter collet carrier plate on the Model D2. These controls move the entire drill turret position vertically and horizontally. The centering procedure is the same except for the use of the drill centering plug in the empty bushing. The counter collet assembly uses its own set of centering controls. This allows the collet assembly to be centered independently from the drill spindles. The counter collet centering controls only affect the collet assembly. The collet assembly should be centered after centering the drill spindles. The drill spindle centering will affect the counter collet position. This is the counter collet vertical centering adjustment micrometer. Located below the vertical centering micrometer is the vertical centering adjustment lock screw. This is the horizontal centering adjustment micrometer. Located above the horizontal centering adjustment micrometer is the horizontal centering adjustment lock screw. Before adjusting the centering adjustments, these two collet holder assembly lock screws must be loosened. The purpose of the two collet holder assembly lock screws is to lock the collet assembly to the drill turret. To center the collet, install the collet centering plug into the collet sleeve. Index the drill turret manually if necessary to align the collet sleeve to the bushing bore. Down and lock the drill turret in place. Next, loosen the collet assembly holder lock screws. Loosen each of the vertical and horizontal centering adjustment lock screws. Manually move the collet centering plug into the empty guide bushing bore. Continue to move the assembly in and out and adjust the vertical and horizontal micrometers until the plug moves smoothly. Lock the collet assembly holder lock screws. Check the centering. Then lock the micrometer lock screws. Make sure that the main camshaft is set to 0 point. Mount the drill and collet cams to the drill turret camshaft. Next, check your layout sheet for the production rate for the job. The index and collet trip dogs must be changed to meet the production rate. If necessary, remove and install new index and collet trip dogs. Each trip dog is held to the trip dog carriers by 2 trip dog mounting screws located here. Mount 2 2362 trip dogs to the outside of the index trip dog carrier. Mount one 2088 trip dog to the inside of the index trip dog carrier. Also mount the collet open-close trip dogs. Mount one 2362 collet trip dog to the outside of the collet trip dog carrier. Mount one 2088 collet trip dog to the inside of the trip dog carrier. Only tighten the mounting screws enough to keep the trip dogs on the carriers. The trip dogs must be able to be moved. Final adjustment must still be done. Now index timing must be set. First set the timing with the turret locked in the up position. Hand crank the machine from 0 until the cam follower is dropped down fully from the first cam's rapid return. Stop hand cranking. Slide one 2362 trip dog until the cam follower contacts the trip dog 1/4 to 1/2 way up the index trip dog. Lock the trip dog in place. Again hand crank the machine. Make sure index is complete before the cam follower begins to ride on the next cam's rapid approach. Continue to hand crank to the end of the next cam's rapid return. Set another 2362 trip dog in place under its follower and lock the trip dog in place. Again, check that the index is proper. Hand crank to the next cam's end of the rapid return. If this point is 0, go slightly past 0. Set the 2088 trip dog in position and lock the trip dog in place. Now set the collet open-close trip dog timing. Hand crank the machine past the counter collet cam and stop just after the turret indexes. Set the collet open trip dog in position under the top trip dog follower. Lock the collet open trip dog in place. You may have to hand crank the machine to lock down the other trip dog mounting screw. To set the collet closed trip dog, hand crank the machine and stop when the tool cams are positioned just before part cutoff. Move the collet closed trip dog into position under the bottom trip dog follower and lock it in place. You may also have to hand crank the machine to finish tightening the mounting screws. Now select and install the drills and drill collets into the drill turret. Set the drill dimension. Install a counter collet into the machine, but do not lock it in place. Collet gripping tension can now be set if the collet is to grip on a stock diameter or if a sample part is available. If not, the tension will have to be set after cutting the part to produce the dimension that will be gripped by the collet. Unlock the collet holder tube lock screw. With the collet open-close fork in the open position and the collet tension adjustment nut backed off, insert the sample part or piece of straightened stock into the collet. Rock the collet open-close fork to close, then open the collet. Increase the collet tension with a collet tension adjustment nut until the part is just held without being forced out of the collet. Slightly increase the tension. Open and close the collet with a collet open-close fork. Make sure the collet tension still holds the part. Leave the collet in the open position. Lock the collet holder tube set screw. Now the drill depth and collet position in the tooling area can be set. You should have previously completed all other machine timing and setup. Check the position of the drill turret tools at 0 of the drill turret camshaft. If necessary, index the turret by hand to move the right tool in position with respect to the cams. Lower the drill turret down. Loosen the micrometer lock screws and back off the 3 micrometers. Start the machine. Push the hand wheel in and hand crank the machine to the midpoint of the rapid approach of the first drill cam. Move the drill lever to check for the clearance between the drill and the stock. The drill should not touch the stock until after the approach of the cam. Hand crank the machine and adjust the drill micrometer so the drill touches the stock at the end of the approach. Continue to hand crank the machine to the next drill position and repeat the procedure. Continue to hand crank the machine and stop at the midpoint of the rapid approach of the collet cam. Stop the machine and open the tool head cover. Check that the collet moves over the part. Restart the machine and hand crank until the start of the collet cam approach. Then stop the machine. Adjust the collet with a collet position micrometer to be over the proper point on the finished part. Adjust the collet for proper gripping tension if it has not been set earlier. Start the machine and allow the machine to produce a few finished parts. This completes your television training tape on the Model D4 drill turret. You may watch this tape as many times as necessary to fully understand the material. When you have finished, return to the operator booklet for your next step.